What if I told you that Ineffa changes everything? However, there's always a but. Now, before we even discuss how Ineffa changes everything or the but, we first need to discuss Ineffa herself and the new reaction so that whatever I am saying actually makes sense to you all. And I promise you that once you see this video, you will have a perfect understanding of everything Ineffa, because I'm gonna be covering her entire kit along with all of her minor intricacies. But if you still have any questions after watching this video fully, then make sure to drop them down in the comments below and I'll respond to each and every one of you individually. But before we get into the rest of the video, a quick word from our sponsor, Loot Bar. Loot Bar is the best way to top up in your favorite games like Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail, and that too only using your UID, which makes it really secure. Basically, you scroll 2 inches down this video and click the first link in the description, which will take you to this site where you'll be presented with a bunch of options, all cheaper than what you see in game. Next, you select what you want. For instance, I'll select the $38 pack, which in-game will cost me $50. Then I'll enter the UID, select the server and click this yellow top-up button, do the payment, and boom! You just got your gems at a $10 cheaper price and the money you save goes in your piggy bank. Now that's what we call a win-win scenario. Loot Bar is 100% trustworthy and is even endorsed by big shots like Games and Chill, Tewart Times and Bridal Shotgun. So unless you hate money, start using Loot Bar today from the link given in the description, and as a first-time user, you will even get an additional 10% discount on your purchase, making your savings an astounding 25%. Now that's what we call a steal. Thanks to Loot Bar for sponsoring today's video, and with all this being said, let's get right into it. Starting off with her elemental skill, which forms a shield around her, which I'll be honest is pretty much dog shit. However, that's not the end of it. Her skill also summons a mini robot that follows the enemy by teleporting around and attacking it every 2 seconds for a maximum of 10 times. Now, the crazy thing about this robot is that it has a 100% uptime, with its duration far exceeding its cooldown. And if you are wondering how does this robot even choose its target, well, it seems to be proximity based, so it will attack whichever enemy is closer to you. Do note that even though these attacks are AoE, their range isn't anything crazy. Moving on to her burst, which is just a big AoE electro attack that also summons her mini robot if it wasn't already on field. If it was, however, then its duration is refreshed. Now, so far it doesn't seem like she's anything crazy, right? In fact, she seems like a 5-star official who has a summon which gets refreshed with the ultimate. And well, you aren't exactly wrong in thinking that. However, this is where her passives come into play. Starting off with her most important passive, which transforms normal electro charge reactions into a new reaction called Lunar Charge. And when this reaction is triggered, a thundercloud appears on field that attacks the enemy every 2 seconds. But before we discuss this reaction in detail, let's first discuss the rest of her kit. So along with converting electro charge to lunar charge, she also buffs the reaction's base damage by 0.7% for every 100 points of attack she has, for up to 14%, meaning 2000 attack in total. Now besides this, there is another passive of hers which we will call A1 that pushes her to be an excellent sub DPS, though with a major downside. But what exactly does this passive do, you ask? Well, you see, this passive essentially makes it so that the mini robot will do an additional attack every 2 seconds if there is a lunar charge thundercloud on the field. And this passive's damage is insane. In fact, to give you an idea of how much damage this is, let's just consider the ultimate F2B team of Sucrose, Xingqiu, Fischl and Ineffa. This team's DPS is around 77,000, out of which Ineffa contributes around 40k DPS. Now, I want you to drop your prediction in the comments. How much of this DPS do you think comes from her passive? If you thought around 50%, then congrats, you're correct. Though to be precise, it's 56%. Now, one thing I didn't tell you before is that the 40k DPS number also includes the damage done by the lunar charge reaction itself. So, if we take out both A1 and the reaction damage, which is 79%, we are left with 21% of 40k DPS. And this is the damage dealt by her skill and burst, meaning she is an absolutely useless electro unit outside of lunar charge teams, because she won't be able to proc her A1 or the lunar charge reaction itself, which is 79% of her total DPS. Moving on to her final passive, this one grants Ineffa herself and the active character an EM buff after Ineffa does her ultimate. So, to summarize her entire kit, just having Ineffa in the party itself changes electro charge reaction to lunar charge reaction and increases its base damage by 14%. As for her skill, it creates a shield and summons a mini robot which follows the enemy and deals electro damage every 2 seconds. On top of that, an additional hit is dealt every 2 seconds, dealing an insane amount of damage if there is a thundercloud on the field. Moving on to her burst, which is just a big AoE electro attack that refreshes the duration of the mini robot or summons it instead. Additionally, Ineffa herself and the active unit gain 6% of Ineffa's attack as EM for 20 seconds. And if you have been enjoying this video so far, then a sub to the channel would make the mini robot happy. And if you want to support even more, scroll 2 inches down this video and click the subscribe plus button to join the channel memberships and gain exclusive perks like directly DMing me on Discord or even a Genshin account review. So now that we understand how our kit functions, let's discuss the new reaction, Lunar Charge. So unlike other reactions which only take one unit into account while calculating damage, Lunar Charge is kinda special because it can consider all 4 units in the team to calculate damage, though that's not always the case. You see, Lunar Charge occurs every 2 seconds and takes into account the stats of all units who have applied an element to the enemy within that 2-second interval. Also, unlike Electro Charge, this reaction can crit, which is just insane. So let's understand how this reaction functions with an example. First, the game takes note of the units who have applied an element to the enemy within the 2-second interval. Next, for each individual unit, the game decides whether they will crit in the Lunar Charge reaction or not, and this chance is based on each unit's individual crit rate. So, in our example, let's assume that all 4 units applied an element to the enemy within the 2-second interval, and only clorinde is the one that does not crit. Now, the game calculates the lunar charge damage of each unit based on these stats, and then the damage obtained is sorted in descending order. After that, the final lunar charge damage is calculated by adding the highest damage with half of the second highest damage and 1/12 of the third and fourth highest damage. Now, this value is what will be shown whenever the thundercloud strikes, provided all units applied an element and only clorinde was the one that did not crit. Now, one interesting thing to note here is that the damage number shown in-game will either have a big font size indicating crit if even one of the units participating in the reaction crits, or a small font size indicating non-crit if all units didn't crit. So, now that we understand her kit and the new reaction perfectly, there are some issues with her, starting off with the elephant in the room, her usability as a unit outside of Lunar Charged. Cause like I said before, most of Ineffa's damage comes from A1 and the Lunar Charge reaction itself. So if you remove that by using her in other teams, you immediately lose out on a lot of damage. And I know you must have heard by now that she does coffee levels of damage, and well, that's correct in a Lunar Charge team. But that's where the comparison ends, as Coffee is a much better support unit than her cause she provides rest shred and healing, whereas Ineffa just provides a dog water shield. As for the Lunar Charge reaction itself, I am not a big fan of it, as I'd much rather have this new reaction do something unique as an alternative to Electro Charge, but still keeping in line with its base spirit. As it is right now, it literally feels like Lunar Charge is just an aesthetic difference that provides an excuse for Hoyoverse to have new characters multiply their damage specifically and have future content tailored to them in that way. And as of right now, the Lunar Charge teams with her are just slightly better versions of Electro Charge teams. That being said, the Electro Charge teams weren't those units' best teams to begin with, so it's not much of an upgrade. It's almost like she is waiting for a new unit who makes use of Lunar Charge reaction to deal insane damage, like how Kinich did with Emily. But on the positive side, and referencing what I said in the beginning of the video about how Ineffa changes everything, well, the very existence of Ineffa itself implies that there are new reactions which may be coming out in Nordcry, like Lunar Melt, Lunar Vaporize, etc., which could potentially give the game a fresh new feel. And you know what I was thinking? I bet that they'll make it so that if you are in the Nordcry open world, then all reactions will be converted to lunar versions of themselves. But what makes me think that? Well, it's cause if you check Ineffa's passive, there is a line there which suggests that Ineffa's kit at the moment is incomplete, and it's probable that she'll gain an extra effect to her passive when she is in Nordcry, cause reactions there will already be lunar versions of themselves normally. So this part of her passive will become absolutely useless, and as such will be replaced with an extra effect that happens only in Nordcry. But hey,
that's just a theory. A game theory.